So for businesses, for legal structures, is it better to set up a proprietorship or a partnership? Well, it depends. They're ultimately the same type of business in the sense that they're both unincorporated businesses, so there's no separate legal entity. The main difference is that a proprietorship is just one individual owner, whereas a partnership is two owners or more. So if you have two or more people that are wanting to be owners in the business, then you can't really set up a proprietorship. Whereas if you have only one person who's setting up the business and going to be the owner, then you can't really have a partnership. So that's the key difference between the two. Otherwise, they're structured very similar in terms of legal structure and taxes and things like that. So which one is better and which one makes most sense? Of course, if it's just you, then a proprietorship makes more sense. Whereas if you have business partners that want to be owners, then a partnership makes most sense. But I would say that be careful with starting up a partnership. I often remind people that a lot of relationships are damaged or ruined because of going into business together. It's one thing to be friends with someone or their sibling or their cousin or their spouse and just have a regular relationship. Maybe you go to restaurants, you go to movies, you hang out together and watch TV or whatever. But it's different if you travel with them, it's different if you live with them, and it's different if you go into business with them. That changes the dynamic. You kind of see them from a different perspective. So proceed with caution when starting a business with anyone especially close friends or family members where you have good relationships that you don't want to harm. So with a partnership, just be very mindful that you're really tying yourself to that other person. Because if you set up that partnership with one or more other people, if they decide to leave and it's just you, the partnership doesn't exist anymore. The company doesn't exist anymore. Because a partnership is unincorporated, it's tied to the individual human entities. So if it's just you left over, technically you have to shut down the business and restart it as a proprietorship. I mean, you'll still have your infrastructure in a lot of ways, but just when it comes to the registration and legal structure, you'll have to go through that process again and register it as a sole proprietorship. Also with a partnership, you'll have to be careful to set it up properly in terms of, who's claiming business revenue and business expenses and how much on their tax returns. You'll probably want some type of ownership agreement, who's getting how much for revenue or net income. What happens if one of the owners wants to leave the company? So there's a lot of things to be mindful of and a lot of things to strategize with if you're starting a partnership. It can be beneficial, especially if you're very much willing to be tied to that person long term for business purposes. But if you're kind of hesitant, it might make more sense just to start up a sole proprietorship on your own and then kind of collaborate with them, or set up a corporation where you're both shareholders, but it's a little bit easier for one or more of the owners to leave and the entity stays alive. The business isn't going to come to an end if the other partners leave the business. So typically, I like sole proprietorships and corporations. There are some situations where a partnership could make sense, but again, just proceed with caution when you're going to business with a close friend, family member, spouse, someone you've worked with before, because things can go wrong, things do go wrong. So you want to make sure that you can navigate those appropriately without causing too much damage to the relationship or having to end the business, especially if the business is, really growing and becoming successful.